We're going to hear now from a top researcher in the field of music and brain development, Assal Habibi, an associate research professor of psychology at the Brain and Creativity Institute of the University of Southern California. Her research takes a very broad perspective on understanding the influence of arts, specifically of music, on health and development.
My name is Assal Habibi. I'm the Director of Center for Music, Brain, and Society at University of Southern California. Today, I am here to share with you a report on the event that we had on June 9th at USC, a symposium on art education, research, and policy. This symposium was put together by Center for Music, Brain, and Society at USC, Create California, LA Opera Connects, and Renee Fleming. It was facilitated by Vice Provost for the Arts at USC, Josh Kuhn. We started the day by having researchers talk about the most updated findings on the role of art and music in child development. Dr. Beatrice Ilari spoke about the role of early music education in development of empathy, social skills, and also language skills in children. I then covered work on the collaboration with the YOLA, Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, and USC Brain and Creativity Institute on the role of music training on education, on executive function development, on brain development. We also talked about the role of music training on development of social emotional skills in children, their families, and their communities. Followed that, Dr. Talia Goldstein talked about theater, how theater can play a role in developing skills such as empathy and perspective taking and social skills in children. We had a panel discussion of researchers where we went over the findings of the research, but also agreed that the research community needs a better set of communication skills and dissemination of the results to policymakers and to educators. We also talked about that maybe exposure to arts and music not only changes the specific skills such as executive function, language, brain development, but it actually induces a global change in brain and child development that helps with each of these skills and the importance of access to any of these domains of art for early child education. Followed that, we had a panel of educators. One of the goals of this symposium is to have educators, researchers, and policymakers in the same room so we can discuss what is working and what is not working. And as part of this panel, we wanted to understand for a music educator or an art educator in the classroom, how are the findings in the research help them go forward with their programs, what is missing in their classroom, and what can the research community and the policy community do to help them do better. Our wonderful education panel talked about the advantages of having Prop 28 passed in California, having access to more funding for arts and music education, but also limitations of what is not working, how are the fundings being allocated to different types of training. And then we also covered a very important aspect of needing to have training for teaching artists and musicians and the issue of credentials. Who gets to be an educator in a classroom, how we can make this an easier path for a lot of educators, for a lot of artists who are very skilled in what they're doing, and how we can use their skills to advance these programs in the classroom where every child can have access to great art and music education. We followed that with a panel of policymakers. We would like to have a connection between what we find in research, but also how that implies for policy. For example, in the research panel in the morning, one of the things we covered is the efficacy of music training for early childhood. Because our research findings show the importance of music training, especially for early childhood, we would like that information to be translated into policy. So not only we have music and arts as part of our high school, but it also is available in our elementary school or even kindergarten. Our panel of policymakers talked about needing to have access to more data, maybe more brief data, more summary of the data, executive summaries that can help them understand what's going on in terms of the world of research, what is missing in the classroom, and how can they use that information to pass relevant legislation to move this work forward. Another thing that we talked about during this policy panel was the status of Prop 28, what is being funded, what is not being funded, and how different districts are using this funding more effectively versus not. On our last panel, we had a conversation among foundations and executive directors of foundations to show us how they are changing their perspective in terms of the new landscape of funding. How with the infrastructure of the federal funding, the foundations are stepping in. They're reaching out to their grantees to find out what is working and what is not working, how they're changing their priorities for better and more effective funding. One of the things that came up as part of this panel was the executive directors suggesting to grantees to contact them, to let them know what's happening for them, especially in the light of diminishing funding, for example, from the National Endowment for the Arts. And we also talked about funding research on arts versus funding art programs by itself, and agreed that both of these pathways are important, and they probably, each one of them has efficacy in a different way, in a way that maybe investment in funding for research has a more long-term goals to show the benefits so more of these programs can be accessible. We also heard from Dr. Andrea Fuentes from LA Opera Connects about the Arts and Health Summit at the LA Opera, and we also heard from Christine Sakota on the programming of the LA County Department of Arts and Culture on what is available in terms of public programming of arts and access to arts across the LA County. And we finished today on a high note in a conversation between Renee Fleming and Dr. Maria Rosario Jackson to have a recap of the day, what we learned today, what are the missing points, how we can build bridges and connect these different sectors of education, research, and policy together, how we can have hope to move forward despite the limitations, and inspiration from all the great work that everybody is doing. This conversation was moderated by Josh Kuhn. From here, I want to just highlight one of the work that my laboratory at USC is doing in collaboration with the LA Opera and their wonderful LA Opera Connects program. My laboratory focuses on understanding the benefits and effects of music training on child development. We have done a series of studies looking at participation in music training for development of children in terms of their cognition, emotion, and social development, and also their ability to have a voice, how to have an agency in their communities. And one of the work that we have been really focusing on is the role of music when it's paired with narrative and story in promoting social and emotional skills. Skills such as empathy, such as perspective taking, compassion. And our idea about this study was that if we actually pair music with narrative and storytelling, as it is in opera training, can we teach children these very important skills that we think are very relevant to their development and maturation and growth. So last year, we have partnered with the LA Opera and Los Angeles Children Chorus to bring this program together. We have a cohort of 26-year-olds who have started their training as part of the LA Children's Chorus. They do this training once a week, about 2 hours a day, 2 hours each week. But in addition to this training, we have wonderful teaching artists from the LA Opera who go to their training and introduce them to the world of opera. What are different elements of opera? How do you put a story and music together? Who's a hero? What is an aria? And they get to also actually practice it and actually play some of the segments of the performances that are ongoing at the LA Opera. In addition to doing so, they're also invited to take part in performances and go and see an opera performance with their families. We ask them to participate in at least 6 performances, and the idea for this is we want them to be able to see a performance space, to see the actual everything coming together, to see costumes, to see lights, to walk into a performance space for them to understand all the elements coming together to actually have an opera performance. Our idea about this study is that not only we are looking at social and emotional skills in relation to training in opera, but we are very interested in understanding development of language skills when they learn how to sing in different languages, listen in different languages, their phonological awareness, their prosody perception, and we think that pairing these two, music and theater and drama, can actually help children more effectively in developing some of these skills that are very important for their maturation. And with that, I'm going to stop and acknowledge my funders and my laboratory and all the collaborators who make this work possible. Thank you.